Hello, and welcome to Mornings with Joel, commercial real estate podcast, where we focus on rising stars and established players in commercial real estate and talk to them about how they are building legacies in today's marketplace. We'd like to welcome everyone. This is the Mornings with Joel CRE podcast. Very excited to have Bruce Thomas with us today. Good to catch up with you as always. And
always.
Glad you're enjoying life and family and all that good stuff. And the grandkids and all the rest. Our grandkids.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So really excited to have you here today. So, just to kind of go a little bit into the background, I know right now you're doing a lot of work in the BioMed Development space. But your history is a little bit more diverse, but you've been around real estate for quite some time. Tell me a little bit about that. How did you actually get rolling and, how this all come about, where you are today?
I stumbled and fell into it.
Okay.
I got into engineering. I got my degree in construction engineering from Arizona State, and it kind of evolved from a conversation I had with my older brother, who was a Cal Berkeley grad and Vietnam vet. He came home and said, so, where are you going to college? What are you studying? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, well, what are you good at? I'm like, math. He's like, oh, you should be an engineer. I'm like, okay, I'll be an engineer. Mm-hmm. So I enrolled in college and took all the, pre-school courses, and which it was physics and calculus and all this stuff. And, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I was playing basketball too, so it was a crazy load. But got to Arizona State, and one of the alumni there, one of the boosters, asked me, about changing over from mechanical engineering to construction engineering. Yeah, again, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. 19, 20 years old. I did it, and I became the first and only varsity athlete in ASU's history to get a degree in construction engineering, construction management, and letter in a major sport. So that's kind of how it started. And I got out of school, went to work for Pulte Homes, built a lot of homes in Arizona, and got home building, and got a job with a commercial developer in Tempe, Arizona. Their base was in San Diego, a company called Pacific Scene, and they were truly entrepreneurial. I mean, they select the sites, they underwrote the sites, they financed the sites, and they took you from A to Z. And my mentor there, a guy named Kurt Stevenson, was a former athlete as well, football player. He took me under his wing, showed me the ropes, and showed me development 101, like grassroots development. And I got bit by the bug then, and been in development ever since. A few years later, I wanted to get back to California, and got hired by a company called Glen Ivy Resorts. Glen Ivy was at that time the largest developer of timeshare resorts in the country. So I was responsible for building hotel resorts in Arizona, in California. It was like having a job that was a vacation. I was truly kind of living a dream in that it really wasn't work, and so it was an opportunity for me to really get an understanding that you could enjoy what you do. Your job didn't have to be a job, and so that jettisoned me into the hospitality space. I still am active in the hospitality space, but over time, I ended up meeting a guy out of New York named Richmond McCoy, and Rich and I became fast friends, and he put together a fund, Urban America, which I ran the second fund's West Coast division for them, both on the fundraising side and the deployment of capital. We raised about $400 million.
By the way, you talk about Urban America. Guess who I was with on Monday? You wouldn't believe it. One of your coworkers from back in the day, Jeff Monnier.
Oh, Jeff Monnier?
Yeah. We were
Jeffrey, Jeffrey.
That we were on the deal we're working on.
Jeffrey's a good man. Good man.
Yeah, exactly.
We got a lot of stories about Jeff.
Yeah, well, he said those urban days were incredible, but we'll talk about that.
No, it was a lot of fun. It was fast and furious. we were some young brothers that were, had access to capital and were doing some fun things. We didn't really know all of what we had at the time. And, we were kind of the first wave of folks that got money from institutions. We got 100 million from CalPERS and LA Fire and Pension Fund and a couple others, that big time pension funds. So it was like what is kind of, I think, a lot of these funds and larger groups are now trying to focus on diversity and inclusion. And it should have been happening a long time ago, but they're talking like they want to do it again, so we'll see. But I was exposed to institutional capital and deploying institutional capital. And most recently was approached by one of those institutional groups, a buddy of mine, Troy Jenkins, and he asked me, about BioMed. And he said, we're going to be deploying capital in that space through one of his relationships. And, was there a way that we could help? I'm like, absolutely, And so we developed a whole company and strategy around the whole biomed life sciences concept, building buildings so that firms that were either growing or incubating or just needed to move into, space that was close to intellectual property of universities, teaching hospitals, and things like that. So those are the real demand drivers, being close to the intellectual property, which are the people that develop the technologies and grow these companies for the next waves of either medicine, technology, and the combination of those two.
Yeah, but I was going to say, tell Troy Jenkins I said what's up when you get a chance to talk to him.
Absolutely.
I'll hear from him. I haven't spoken to him in a minute. Yeah, that's exciting. But I did want to ask you one thing because I want to take a deeper dive into the biomed space.
Mm-hmm.
But as it relates to hospitality, because you have a lot of experience in that background in that space, what are your thoughts on hospitality right now? Is this a good time to get in? Should we wait? Should we look at more conversions from hotels? Okay. What about apartments? Dig in, you're saying?
Get in, yeah. And there's a lot of that going on. One of my partners, Lynn Toller, she has an apartment platform, and it's a workforce housing platform. And there's a lot of conversion of kind of the older exterior corridor hotels into workforce housing, because you can't build it cheap enough to really be workforce housing. So you almost have to acquire and convert. And that's been one of her models. But as far as pure hospitality, either ground up development and or acquisition is something that I still look at, even though I'm in biomed development, I still look at hospitality. One of the projects that we're working on has both a biomed medical office and hospitality component. So it's very much in what I like to do. And mainly because a lot of times we're in an area where the hospital may have beds and stuff for the patients, but the family that visits doesn't have, a hotel in close proximity. And so they've got to go, and they're miles away from, where their families are at in the hospital. So if we have a site that's large enough for, a hotel, we definitely consider that.
Okay. That's quite interesting because obviously during COVID, hospitality became a dirty word, but you should always
they suffered quite a bit, but we're seeing a rebound. And quite frankly, I can't find product for, some of my hospitality people.
Yeah. Well, I know people are definitely traveling again. As I mentioned, I was out of town this weekend and all the flights were full, airports were packed.
Yeah.
So people are still getting around and they're traveling again. So
and out here, the mask mandate finally has been lifted in California, and people are a lot more comfortable, traveling and getting out and doing things. And hopefully we're past the major portion of this pandemic or whatever it was, and people are getting back to normal living.
Yeah, quite interesting. So you mentioned, let's pivot back to biospace because that's pretty exciting. Actually, I wanted to ask you about one other thing, and I just remembered this as it relates to your background. You were doing some work also with the bankruptcy courts and assets that they had. Is that correct? Can you tell me?
I actually managed the bankruptcy court itself as an asset. So it was more of an asset management job. And, I had to cater to all the judges and stuff like that, and all the staff, make sure that the building operated, the way that the city wanted it to operate.
I got you. Are there opportunities there? You think that people should be looking at opportunities coming out the bankruptcy courts, or?
Yeah, there are definitely, that's one of those areas where I've got a couple people that I know that specialize and focus in that area,
Mhm.
and they would always come up with opportunities. It's not something that I'm versed in, and so I kind of more of a traditional, relationship where I find my deals and stuff. But some people find real opportunities in those bankruptcy situations.
Right, right. Gotcha, gotcha. So now talking back about biomed, because that's quite interesting. What is your ideal situation right now? Are you more so looking for sponsors that you can step in and be the developer for? Are you looking for your own opportunities to sponsor, or how are you actually pursuing that? Your
A
platform.
combination of both. If there's a group that may have a site that they want developed, we can come in and partner with them, either buy the site or they can leave their site in the deal, and
Mhm.
we can bring in capital and development expertise to get it off the ground and get it done, get it built, and lease it out and help them with that process.
Okay, all right. And are they usually single tenant type offices, or are they generally, because you said lease it up? So I would assume that
Yeah, yeah.
some are not. Depends
It
on
could be single tenant, design build, or multi tenant. We're working on a multi tenant building now here in California, life sciences and medical office. And so it's a
okay.
combination of both life sciences companies that have need for clean room space and things like that are typically what we look for.
Okay, all right. Could you actually reposition certain assets as well to fit
Absolutely.
that need?
That's another, yeah, yeah. So we do ground up and repositioning, buy existing buildings, repositioning them because, speed to market is one of the things that we have challenges with, as developers. And typically the development process is on a minimum,
Mhm.
a year, 18 months to 2 years development cycle, depending upon what part of the country you're in and how the entitlement and building permitting phases go. Every once in a while you can find an opportunity that's entitled and ready to go and from a ground up standpoint you can go in and it's shovel ready. Most of the time you got to get it ready, and so
Mhm.
which means you got to hire the architects, the engineers, get the site planning done,
Mhm.
and depending upon the acreage and the size, we're looking to do some campuses, which means that it's going to be 10 acres or more so that we
Okay.
can have multiple buildings. If the landowner is such that they want to leave their land in the deal, they get a preferred return back to them, and we build it for them, and we bring in the capital, and we'll go to the market and find tenants.
Okay. Okay. That's quite interesting. So, would you also focus on areas that are closer to universities and existing hospitals, or does it really matter?
No, that's part of the drivers. We want to be close to the universities and the hospitals because a lot of times those professors and doctors are the ones that are doing the researching and research to evolve into smaller companies that grow into larger companies. They have the patents on new technology, new medicines that need to. This COVID thing has really kicked off a lot of entrepreneurs as it relates to finding prevention and cures for COVID. And so you're finding a lot of doctors needing space for trials and new medicines and things like that. So and it's from an institutional capital standpoint, a lot of capital is looking for these types of deals because the returns are so nice.
Yeah, that's a good point. What actually makes the return so nice on a particular deal like this that stands out from the crowd?
I think it's similar to back in the dot-com days.
Hmm.
There are a lot of companies being funded on concepts, and
Okay.
so there's a lot of money, chasing these concepts and these deals, and
Mhm.
so companies that are new could be very well funded, and they need time. My partner, Dr. Hart, Phil Hart, who is a part of our biomed team, developed a building in Boston about 30 years ago. Out of that development, a drug called Bidil was developed. And
Mhm.
Bidil, it went through a lot of clinical trials, but it took years for it to be developed and get to market. And it's the first race specific drug specifically for African Americans or Black folks that deals with congestive heart failure.
Wow.
And it came out of that incubation out of that, office building that they built in Boston 30 years ago.
Mhm.
And so sometimes it takes 10 years for a drug, so let's say a drug, to go through clinical trials and get to market. But all that while, that space is being occupied, and sometimes they need to grow.
Institutions can be funded, they can be capitalized well at that particular point in time, as you said, kind of at a seed stage, but have the money in order to be a good tenant for many years going forward, and obviously provide a return from the capital even after the construction period of time. So that gives you
Absolutely.
a really good runway to have a profitable building and even exit if you choose to
Yeah,
on that window.
absolutely. Because, oftentimes, these institutional folks are they may not lead the charge into a market, but once they find out about a market, they'll overpay.
Yeah.
They will overpay. And I'm seeing that now in San Diego. And San Diego, Boston, these institutions, they are overpaying to be in those markets just because, those markets are, the leaders in space in that sector.
Yeah, yeah, very good point. So, what's your typical footprint? Like, if you had an ideal situation, I know as a developer, you really don't care because you'll develop whatever needs to be developed. But what would you say is a typical footprint or model for a particular project like this? If somebody came to you and said, "Look, I'm an IT guy. We're developing this drug or this new technology, and we need a building," I guess it's really going to be driven by how many people that they have, or do you have kind of a footprint or a package that you can?
No, it's individually. We program according to the need,
Okay.
and we'll sit down with the tenant and say, okay, what are your lab space requirements? What are your office space requirements? Common areas, requirements. And our architect and our team will get together with them and design a space specifically for them. The footprints, it really doesn't matter. We build buildings based upon the real need, and we'll sit down and we'll talk to you. Joe, what do you need? Depending upon what that need is, we'll come back with a space requirements and all that needs and that assessment, and put a site plan and floor plans together based upon those needs.
Right, right. Okay, that sounds real good. Now, you mentioned one other thing that we talked about before, and I certainly want to circle back to it, and that was institutional capital wanting to deploy capital to minorities. I've been at a lot of those meetings, a lot of those discussions, and sometimes, it gets hung up between the institution that's actually managing the capital for the pension fund or for the, municipality and the actual entrepreneur or the fund manager. And it seems to never get through that vetting process because the money tends to, just by default wind up at the largest shops, the BlackRocks of the world. So what have you been seeing as regards that money actually making it into the hand of minority fund managers? Because we've seen historically, and you know this as well, Bruce, that oftentimes they'll outperform a lot of their larger counterparts. So are you actually seeing that money get through the funnel these days?
No, no, and I'm just being real. I mean,
Yeah,
the dialogue is still there.
still work to be done.
And I've gone through this exercise 3 times in the last 8 months
Hmm.
with institutional capital. I won't mention any names, but they know who they are, that have reached out to us and said, "Oh, a minority and woman-owned firm
Hmm.
in biomed, in life sciences space. We want to work with you." We present opportunities to them, and they're like, "Oh, this is great. Let's go down. Let's get to our regional guy, and we'll talk to our regional guy."
Hmm.
Go to the regional guy, and the regional guy will, "Oh no, that's not a market we want to be in." And it's like, either you trust us to know what the hell we're doing, or you don't.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. We as people of color always have to prove ourselves and do better than our non-melanin counterparts. And we have to know what we're doing even more, because we can't make mistakes. We don't get second shots at institutional capital. So we know what we're doing. We have to know what we're doing. And they just need to trust that if given a shot, we can make them some money. Now, will we lose them some money? Absolutely. But their managers now are losing them money. And so Victor McFarland
That's what this all sounded like when you were talking about his
No,
story, how he got started. So go
Victor,
ahead.
Victor was one of the first guys that got institutional capital. I'll never forget this.
Yeah.
I was at CalPERS, and I was working on behalf of Urban America, and we were trying to get money from them. And the real estate guy, chief investment officer of real estate, told us to go talk to Victor, because in his eyes, they had allocated money to Black folks that they were going to allocate money to, and it was Victor. And so we actually had to go hire a lobbyist to go back in to help us get the money, and he didn't look like us. It was somebody that Victor, recommended, and they helped us get the money. We got the money, but again, and I've seen some of those institutions do Victor dirty, because it's like he suffered a loss on a portfolio that the market, everybody was suffering losses, but they treated him differently. And it's sad because everybody else that they brought in had the same issues. The market slid. When the market slides, the market slides. You can't get 20% returns in a 6% market.
Yeah.
And I remember Victor standing up in one of those, town hall meetings that they had, and they were talking about, deploying capital to people of color and women. And a part of that argument was, you guys want, 20% returns, but it's a 6% market. So what do you want us to do?
Yeah.
And basically, the non-melanin people would basically lie to them and say, yeah, we can get these returns for you. Give us the money. They give them the money, like, oh man, guess what?
Yeah.
We only got a 6% return. Oh, no problem. Here's 20 more million. Here's 100 more million. Here's another 200 million. We love you. It's a lot of conversation, and we continue to move forward anyway. There are some institutions that are deploying capital, but it's really, really relationship driven, where I've got a relationship with this group or that individual for 20 years. And they know us. They know us beyond our skin color. They know us beyond being male or female. They know the character of who we are, and they trust that we know what the hell we're doing.
Yeah. We always say that the real estate industry is a relationship-driven industry, but it's even more so at that level. If you really want
Absolutely.
to get things.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, because it's still a good old boys network, and they're letting us in more, but it's not what they said that it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not what they indicated that they even want to do. I've had one group said, hey, our heart's in the right place, but our execution sucks. And this is from one of the top guys at this institution that has 10 billion in dry powder right now, and they can't get it out the door because of what he said, poor execution.
Yeah.
And just write us a check.
Yeah.
that's the execution. Write us a check and we'll give it back, with a return. That's the execution.
I know. It's so funny. You talk about Victor during that time, and I remember him telling us that, or telling me actually about how he was trying to tell those institutions to, don't lock in your losses. Just sit tight. It's going to come back, and it did roll back. Because certain assets are inherently good. It's like Apple stock ain't going nowhere, right? Yeah. Amazon stock ain't going nowhere. It might dip, but it ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
Right. And so the same thing here. And, but people, they get scared, and, it may have been, well, I know it was a lot of people outside of the decision makers that were crying and whining about losing capital. But again, like you mentioned, it was being lost everywhere. So.
Yeah, and a lot of times those guys that are making the decisions, they're concerned about their jobs,
right?
And it's a job, and so they've got to protect their jobs, and whereas folks that are family office and developers that come up with on their bootstraps, they're less risk adverse. They understand that it's going to take some hard work and get a little dirty. They're going to create value. Whereas, institutions, they're less entrepreneurial. They want to coupon clip and be safe, because at the end of the day, they got a job to protect and they want to be around, tomorrow. And, we understand and assess risk, but we also understand that secondary markets, and that's where I really like to focus. We did it at Urban America. Secondary markets are a gold mine, and it's just around the corner from a primary market. But you're a lot of times you're in those commuter zones where people are commuting an hour to get to that primary market, and they're coming from that secondary market because no one's built in that secondary market to relocate those jobs and that company to that secondary market where the people actually live.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Glenn, I wanted to mention, and everyone, we're going to be getting to Q&A in about 5 minutes, so just hang tight, and we'll get all your questions. So sit tight, we'll be right there. But you bring up a good point. We've seen that dramatically in Atlanta, for an example. And as traffic increased in the urban core, that's why you get this urban spread, because everybody's saying, well, I'd rather be out here, I live out here. And you look at the submarket of Alpharetta, for an example, in Atlanta, wound up having a lot of those executives living in that area because it was a nice area. We'll bring all the other corporate executives in, and then you have like a UPS that says, well, why don't we put our office up here? Right. So we don't all have to drive into downtown.
Right.
And the other people who work for a company want to move closer, and it just grew and grew and grew. And even the perimeter market, I don't know how well you know Atlanta, but that's the north side of the city, the northern bypass. But it has actually more office space than downtown Atlanta. It's technically a suburban submarket. So, what you say is 2,000% correct. State Farm now has over 1 million square feet in that region as well, in that submarket. But you bring up a real powerful point, because as cap rates continue to fall in like New York, Boston, DC, and places like that, people were running to Atlanta and San Diego and other places like that in order to look for opportunities. And obviously that's driven up the prices here as well. And that will continue to go. But it's always, what's that next sub-market or secondary market? Because those where the opportunities are.
Yeah. And land is king. Location is still king. And if you've got land in a good location near, a university or a teaching institution, a teaching hospital, from our standpoint, those could be demand drivers where, there could be a space needs opportunity.
Yeah. You were just mentioning something that I got to get back to you on. There's an area where this group was actually trying to build a hotel. I don't want to give it away on a public forum like this, but a very, very good area that actually would be perfect for life sciences because of all the infrastructure that's already there. And they couldn't get the hotel built because it was right during the middle of COVID. So, merging those two together, this could actually be an excellent opportunity for that. So we'll talk about that offline.
Love to take a look at it. Yeah. We were actually looking in the Atlanta area. Tyrone Rochelle and one of his partners, Michael Tabb, who's gone on to Google now, we were having them look at it in Atlanta because that was one of the target markets for Cal Stirs, and they're actually looking, at some opportunities down in that market. But Atlanta and that suburban market, I think is around Georgia Tech. Those are some of the demand drivers and stuff that people are now coming in tying up stuff.
Oh yeah. If you could get around Georgia Tech now, you're doing real good. It's so crazy, and they just finished stabilizing one of their massive new structures that they built near the Georgia Tech campus as well. So it's a lot going on there. Actually, across the highway from the Georgia Tech campus, where anybody in Atlanta knows where that is, on Spring Street down that way. But good stuff, man. Absolutely. And one last thing I do want to circle back on, because this is, I will say, somewhat unique to you, Bruce. And one thing I really appreciate about you is your desire to give back and to help other minorities get to that next level. And that's really what this is all about. This podcast is about trying to help that next generation to come along. And I know you've done a lot of work with your daughter to try to push her forward in that regard and help her out. So tell us a little bit about that, your passion and how, you're willing to work with others, and, what your thoughts are on that, and what the possibilities are going forward.
It's definitely a passion of mine. I think that our life is not our own. It's we go through what we go through so that we can give to somebody else, and whether that be knowledge and opportunity, experience. My daughter has followed me into the industry. She got her master's degree from my alma mater, Arizona State, in what I do, real estate development, and graduated in the arena that I used to play basketball in like 30 years later. And she's really good. She's a part of our firm and handles entitlements and stuff like that. But being able to see something and know that it's possible is how we grow that next generation. And if they can see that I can build a hotel and I can build an office building and make money and have fun, I can, play basketball. I've got a young guy that is at Sacramento State playing basketball. And when we started talking, he was like, yeah, I'm in construction management. And I'm like, that's my path. That's a hard path that you're on, but that's my path. And I got you. Anything that you need, I got, because number one, playing sports is tough, and then having a real major, like construction engineering, construction management, I know what his load is like. And we've got to encourage that next generation so that they understand it's possible. You can own a hotel. You can build a hotel. You can build an office building, and you can manage it. And so for me, doors that were open for me weren't open just for me. They were open for me to open for other people. And that's what I want to do. I was the first, but I don't want to be last in building buildings on what has traditionally been a white male dominated industry. That's my truth. That's what I've seen, in my career.
Right.
The people that I, typically are the gatekeepers for those funds, whether it be institutional or, private equity or, family office, they've been white males. And in the last 15 years or so, we've seen more women and more women of color, more people of color, in those decision-making processes and in charge of those decisions, but it's still not enough. The two of the three most recent institutional situations that I've run into, the intermediary was a Black man, and they're trying to run interference to get us in the door for this institutional capital to deploy capital to us, and they do their job in getting us to the table, and we are liked by the decision makers, but when it goes back down to the lieutenants to say, okay, we're going to deploy capital, that's when we get radio silence. Yeah. And so they need to do better in following through what they said they're going to do. And because we are capable, people of color are capable. Our young people are smart. They're learning at the same institutions, if not better institutions than the non-melanated people. And we just need to get a shot. We just need to be put in the game.
I hear you. Do you think there's opportunity with corporate sponsors as opposed to just pursuing institutional pension funds and that sort?
Absolutely. You're seeing, these corporate, sponsors diversifying and putting people of color and women in decision making, where the person that's actually the decision maker to allocate funds is a Black woman. Some of these pension fund advisors are hiring people of color and women that now have the juice to make it happen. So no, I think that corporate sponsorship, anybody that wants to deploy capital will take it.
Yeah, I hear you. So it just spins well, right? So it's all good. It's all good. Well, let's go ahead and open up for Q&A, and we appreciate your time being with us and everyone sitting through the conversation here. Glenn Gray, I wanted to start with you. You had your hand up early on. If you're still there, you mind jumping in and asking your question?
Yes, thank you, Joe. I am here, full transparency. I'm driving, I'm on the road, so I'll keep the camera off. Brother Bruce, I really appreciate the conversation today. It's really inspiring. Sometimes I think I have a ADHD when it comes to development, because there are so many different asset types that I'm interested in. But I also hear, you perhaps took a contrarian approach when you shifted from hotel to biomed, in which some may say, you know what, you're operating outside of your niche or your core competency. So my question really, I would love for you to unpack a little deeper your mindset, or what was your approach to when you shifted into a completely different asset class. What did you rely on? What was that core competencies, or what was that value proposition that you knew you brought to the table? Obviously, there's a experience with executing on a lot of deals and your construction management, but was there something that you said internally that you were going to hang your hat on, and that is what you were going to build this next iteration of your development life with?
No, great question. Building a building is building a building. For me, having built buildings before, asset class really didn't matter. If I can build, a office building, I can build a hotel. I just need to have an understanding of the components and how it comes together. And the other thing that I do is I hire the best in class around me to support me. I don't need to know everything. I need to know the people that know everything about that particular asset class, and that's it. I've always liked different challenges. No commercial building is exactly alike. No two commercial buildings are exactly alike, and because of that, each new project is going to bring about new challenges. And so hotels have their own, challenges and opportunities, just like an office building, whether it be a medical office building, an industrial building. Industrial buildings are easy. They're typically tilt-up buildings, and there's not a whole lot of, brain matter required. Biomed, life sciences projects, there's a little more intrigue in, you've got lab space, you've got a combination of spaces that you may have to layer in from an architectural design standpoint. And then, you hire people that have done it in that space before. From a general contracting standpoint, you hire best in class. You hire the architects that have 20 years in that space. And so they know what they're doing. And, then it's about managing people. I think that if you're out looking at different asset classes, and at some point in time, it'll choose you. And I think that both hospitality and this biomed biotech thing chose me more than I chose it. And the other thing is, you follow the capital, follow the money, and how can I help, the money get deployed? And that's one of the things that we saw coming up with the whole concept of the BioMed Development Team.
Okay, good. Appreciate that, Glenn. Thank you for participating and being part of that. And any other questions that you guys may have, you can put those in the chat, or raise your virtual hand as well. We'll certainly get to you. You mentioned something here, Bruce, about following the money, and I've always mentioned that you could see there's a path of capital where it's flowing. There's an ebb and flow to it, but it's generally going in a particular direction. And if you can position yourself in front of it, or even in the way of it, you could actually do well. Actually think about it. And obviously, this shift, everything ran toward multifamily and industrial, right? And that became the big thing. So what's the next thing? Maybe it's a matter of getting the IRR report from Integral, or maybe it's something else to kind of find out, what's that next cycle. But being able to position yourself there in front of it is very valuable.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we see, having been involved in institutional capital before. We still have those relationships, and we hear where they want to deploy capital. It takes time for them to find opportunities and find people to help them deploy the capital, and it's just a matter of getting in front of the right person, with the right opportunity at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Matt, you had a question here. What does a typical capital stack look like for a biomed life science project? 65% debt, 35% equity. So, Matt, you can join us as well if you want to come on camera and ask more of related to your question. But
no, that's about right. Like more leverage, some like less. It really depends on the sponsor and their liking, and what the institutional partner, the LPs, or what their return hurdles are. And each institution has their own preferences as far as return hurdles. and however you need to meet them, more leverage, less leverage, you work it out. But that's typically what we're seeing, 35, 65.
All right. That's really not far off from a lot of typical projects
Mm-hmm.
at particular range. So,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of fits in. What other opportunities, well, you mentioned secondary markets. Do you see this model being good at all in tertiary markets at all, or what are your thoughts? A little bit harder?
Well, it depends on what metro you're in. I'm seeing stuff in Virginia, Northern Virginia, as it moves away from, DC, Maryland. And those are, secondary markets that are now becoming primary markets because of both the companies that are relocating back there and the hospitals and the colleges that are back there, and so you got a big cluster of universities that are, expanding in this space. Arizona State out in Arizona and their arch rival, the University of Arizona, have collaborated on space in Phoenix in this biotech sector. They've got medical office building and they're a medical school, like right down the street from one another. So there's collaboration going on. These secondary and tertiary markets are gaining momentum, and depending upon the company, they want to be around a strong labor force, and that's that intellectual property, from the universities as these kids come out that they're graduating that are studying chemistry or whatever, and they fall into these companies that use their skill set, their intellectual power to grow their businesses.
Yeah, that's a good point, because a lot of universities technically could be in tertiary markets. I look at even the University of Georgia. That's way out in Athens. I mean, that's an hour plus from Atlanta. It's a major university, and it's obviously not the only one. So that actually is a good point. I was thinking of also, you talk about development outside of the city. If you look at the new Silver Line in DC that runs out to IAB, Dulles International, there's a lot of growth taking place along that line and in that corridor, which is a good little ride from the city, from that standpoint. So, that growth is certainly growing away from the urban core. But the universities produce a lot of the, people that would be key for the workforce in these particular institutions in BioMed. That's a very good point that you make there, and the opportunities that are there as well. Let's go ahead and grab Uriah Robinson. Uriah, we appreciate having you here today. You're always here, so thank you.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Thomas. Thank you very much for this session. I did have a question. What type of advice would you offer to those that are new to commercial real estate, that are looking to raise the equity portion of the capital stack? What type of suggestions or insight from your experience have you seen to be some best practices?
Talk. Network. You can never have, too many friends when you're looking for money, because eventually somebody, if you talk enough about it to the right people, you'll get to the right person, because money's out there looking for deals. Money's always looking for deals. And if you have a valuable deal, make sure your deal is tight and that you can present your deal, and start presenting it, start talking to folks like Joe. He's going to tell you about, this person. He's going to tell you, and being here and asking that question is you're on it, you're on it. And so that's how we do it, networking and, communicating with folks that a lot of times you may not get a deal done with a person today, and it may happen 15 years from now, but developing those relationships that, you mentioned a name and Joe was like, oh yeah, I tell Troy, I said, hey, Troy and I've known each other for 20 years, and so a lot of times those relationships that, could be casual in nature today, may be your next business partner, down the road.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Got it. Thank you. Absolutely. That's valuable. Thank you for that insight.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a big point, Bruce. Even over my years, you expect things to happen more immediately, but sometimes it's like, oh yeah, well, I've known this person for so many years. I could just call them up and say, hey, what about this, what about that, and that bond is formed where you can actually start getting some stuff done.
Absolutely.
And it just takes time, unfortunately, that's part of the seasoning of being in the industry. And really the only way to get around that is what you just said, talk.
Yeah.
Because, if you don't talk, then nobody knows you and they're not going to make those connections for you. So,
yeah, never be afraid to meet somebody and hand out a card, because, it's like, no is not a rejection. To me, no is just not now.
Yeah, not today.
It doesn't mean that, at some point in time, the timing won't be right.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I noticed also is that, and I didn't come up with this, but I remember a buddy of mine telling me about it, that a lot of people that he knew that were analysts and other low-level positions years ago, now they're top executives. And if you keep in touch with those people as they change jobs and everything else, you never know what can, come out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, really good. All right, you're right. I think he had one more. Oh no, who's Matt Reed? I guess it is. Had one more question. What advice are you giving to construction students that want to get into development but haven't been exposed to the finance portion?
If you're around somebody that is developing a project, and you're providing construction services, ask them, can you help with the performer? Ask them to, let you look at their performer and start modeling it. Joel talked about analysts and folks like that. Typically as a developer, you start off analyzing numbers. I did. You start, with a construction budget and, how do you bring the financing in and how do I develop, rates of return. And, now you've got programs that, drop all that stuff in for you. Back in my day, we had to develop the model, and so it was way more arduous, but, now you've got templates out there that you can drop stuff in, whether it be multifamily, hotel, office buildings, each one has their own model. And you just start asking questions and asking, can you start developing performance and running numbers? Because that's how you learn. I think that anybody that's in construction, this is just my preference. Some people just love building buildings and being in construction. But for me, I wanted to be able to control more of the process, being in basketball. And I related back to basketball, being a point guard. I had the shooting guard, I had the, small forward, power forward, and the center. Everybody had their job. And it was the point guard's job to get the ball to those people at the right time so that they could, utilize their strengths. And it's the same thing in real estate development. As a developer, you got your contractor, your architect, your engineers, and your finance people, your attorneys. You got to be able to layer all those people into the project at the right time, know who to call, when to call, and what those needs are. And the only way you do it is start asking questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions and say, hey, can I learn? Can you help me with this? Can I do that for you? Do it for free. Do it for free. Because if you could do it for free, when they start paying you, you'd be like, I did this for free. Yeah. I'm winning, because I've done it for free.
Yeah. Very good point. Very good point. So, Matt, hopefully that answers your question. We appreciate you being here and participating in today's session. So, Bruce, as we wrap up, what final thoughts do you have for our audience today? What final words of wisdom?
Wow.
And keep in mind, a lot of the folks on the line today are newer to commercial real estate. So just wanted to put that in as you kind of think of your words.
Yeah, commercial real estate is unique. Every project that you'll do and run into is unique. I started off in home building, and I built about 1,000 homes with Pulte, and it was just cookie cutter. And if you like adventure, if you like newness, commercial real estate is the way to go. And there's so many different aspects of it, whether it's brokerage, whether it's an architect, construction management, civil engineering. There's so many aspects of commercial real estate. And while it's work, it could be a lot of fun. And that's the thing that I would encourage everybody to do is, make this fun and look at your job as not as really a job, but an adventure. And the adventure is you get to play grown up in this, kind of tinker toy building blocks of a society and build buildings that people occupy and live in and work in. And you can go back and show your kids, your grandkids, like, this is what I did, and this is how the universe used me to facilitate change in a particular area. This was needed and we did this. And, share as much as you can, because you can't take any of the stuff with you. You were put on this planet for a particular time. And we don't know how long none of us are going to be here. We can't take any of it with us. And we might as well have some fun while we're doing it and enjoy the hell out of life. Go skiing. Skiing.
Yeah, just like me, right?
Yeah, go to the snow.
Yeah, skiing or falling down the mountain, one of the two.
Just don't break nothing.
Yeah, I got a swollen knee, but I didn't break nothing, so that's a good.
No, you winning. Little ice, you all right.
Yeah. So good stuff, man. I actually enjoy snowmobiling a little bit more, but that's another story. So
yeah.
That was awesome. But
I'm a hot cocoa at the lodge kind of guy.
Yeah, I hear you. We got a chance to go to the site where they filmed Yellowstone, up there in the mountains of Utah as well. So, but that's another story for another conversation. Yeah. But for all you guys who don't know, we were talking about our weekends before we got on the recording here. So we appreciate adding that in there. But Bruce, listen, we're gonna wrap up here. We try to keep it to about an hour, so we're down to 1 minute. And we certainly appreciate having you here today. All the great conversation, really enjoyable, and definitely want to talk to you about some other things that are in the hopper. Like I said, we'll talk offline about those. But
we're still working on Vancouver for you.
Yeah, well, please, we'll talk more about that as well, and try to get that brought together. This other one is down here in the south, and again, I'll get with you on more details on that. I want to find the builder on that project as well. But for everyone here, this has been the Mornings with Joel CRE podcast. I want to thank you very much for being here. We certainly appreciate having our guest Bruce Thomas here today, and we look forward to seeing you next week as well. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, Bruce.
All right. Appreciate you.
Signing out. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
All right, you too.
All right, everybody.
You've been listening to Mornings with Joel, commercial real estate podcast, where we focus on rising stars and established players in commercial real estate and talk to them about how they are building legacies in today's marketplace. Please check back weekly to hear our upcoming guests.